Mike Pompeo is set to brief President Donald Trump this morning on his visit to both Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Meanwhile, the Washington Post publishing what it describes as Jamal Khashoggi's last column. In it, Khashoggi writes, governments in the Middle East, quote, have been given free rein to continue silencing the media at an increasing rate. His final words. Joining us now, James Carafano, Vice President for National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. And James, let's start there. That if Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince was involved, if that happened, it could have been because he won't tolerate criticism. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that's why we take this issue seriously. Look, if it wasn't for who this person was, this would just be a bad episode of CSI. But he was a harsh critic of the administration. The Saudi administration actually tried to engage with him, and the more they engaged with him, the higher his profile was, and the harsher the criticism gets. So the notion that somehow the Saudis were deeply concerned about him and his criticism, that's why there's a real a credible thing about that they might have done something. So that's why I think people take this case very seriously. Absolutely.
And we're waiting on the facts. The facts matter because the foreign policy that we have with that region of the world absolutely matters, right?
Yes. I mean, both Turkey and Saudi Arabia are in important strategic relationships for the United States. And so sustaining those relationships going forward and protecting the credibility of the United States, that we're not just blowing in the wind, that we are a serious leader in the region, that we are making responsible decisions, that we are holding people accountable, that we're not just going to be blown around by disinformation. People are looking at how the U.S. acts, so our credibility is also on the line.
Yeah, we don't want to overreact and we don't want to underreact, and we have to get the facts first. But in the background of all of this, and it's very important, is the fact that there is a relationship, a trade relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. They are a top weapons buyer. Listen.
I've had some senators come up and some congressmen. They said, well, you know, sir, I think what we should do is we should not take that order. I said, who are we hurting? It's 500,000 jobs. It'll be ultimately $110 billion, the biggest order in the history of our country from an outside military. And I said, we're going to turn that down? Why would we do that?
This is how Democrats hear that, James. This is Nancy Pelosi. Trump has said, follow the money. If we have a good commercial deal with Saudi Arabia, we shouldn't be concerned if they're killing journalists. And she goes on. Do you think that's the right response?
No, I mean, I think all these things have to be weighed in. So, for example, there's a war in Yemen. What Iran wants to do is basically have a Hezbollah in Yemen. They want to have a group in Yemen that's permanently attacking people in the Middle East with impunity. That's an interest of the United States. We don't want that to happen. Iran is an expansionist power. We don't want a war in the region, so we want to balance the power there. So I think all these interests have to be weighed. And look, there's plenty of time for this. Congress is not even going to start looking at this until after the midterms, and so we'll have time to get facts. And I think Congress should be behind a serious discussion, but it's really kind of weeks off.
All right, James Carafano, thank you very much for your perspective. It seems like everything's happening after the midterms.
It does, yeah.